lead our conversations to really kind of think about remote employees, engagement, retention, and what can we do better. So with that in mind, I'm just going to go ahead and get started right away and share my screen. Awesome. So put it into slideshow mode. Awesome. So I'm the founder and CEO of Scoot, and you're in Scoot. So it's not every day that you get to attend a webinar in a platform that also is the host of the actual webinar. And we work with so many HR leaders and managers and C-suite across the country in dealing with remote work. And it's one of the reasons why we built this platform. The program is going to move fast today. So I encourage you to definitely participate and throw out any questions or chats that you may have. We'll go over this agenda, the problem, what drivers are, and we're going to do some peer learning and sharing, which is a completely new concept. But the economy is tough out there right now, and everyone's kind of worried about what's going to happen. And so one thing that we can do is we can help each other. In addition to just whatever tips I give you today, you can share with each other some of the things that you do. And so peer learning and breaking off into small groups is a completely new idea, and we're gonna show you how that works today. Some other strategies, a couple case studies of companies using Scoot, and then Q&A. So straightforward program. Now, why do we even focus on remote work? Well, some people think that everyone will return back to the office, but the truth is that that's not what the data is really showing. You can see here, this is work from home media, which is the amount of like internet and how much people are consuming at home. It correlates exactly like work from home days, and you can see how much it went up in the pandemic, obviously. And then it kind of came back down again. And this includes restaurant workers and auto mechanics and factory workers. But what's important about this data is that work from home has stabilized for about the last 15 months. And it's actually just about to start climbing up again when you talk to the economists out there. And that's because there is just so many kind of financial benefits and flexibility benefits for staff that they really prefer it. And also new companies that are forming tend to be forming remote only, and that drives further growth as the kind of new companies tend to grow a little bit faster than old ones. So the data is really, really clear, but it's also clear that people are less engaged when they work remote. So it's great that they get this flexibility, but the truth is that kind of their understanding of purpose, their understanding of the company's mission, it's dropping. And there's a lot of different data points that show this, and this is probably why you came today. But when the economy is tough, it's not that retaining employees is top of mind, but what really you have to think about is retaining your top performers, right? Because top performers have options even in a down economy. And when they start to see a company struggle, it doesn't take them long to think, oh, maybe I better hitch my wagon to another train here because this one's not going where I want it to go. And so when we think about retention, we're not just thinking like everybody, we're thinking about the people who you need and who, if they leave, you would replace them even if the economy was really, really tough. Okay, and that's what today we're going to focus on, is retaining your most talented people, your most important people. Now, there are a lot of negative impacts to this. Just absenteeism being one that we don't talk about. It's not just people resigning; it's people quiet quitting. Right? They're not paying attention to what's going on. Team morale drops, sales drop, and productivity overall can drop. So there are a lot of effects that are adjacent to this kind of disengagement. And retention is one of them. And it's the easiest one to quantify. it's expensive to replace people. It's especially expensive to replace really, really good people. So, it's about a third of a salary to replace someone who's really, really effective. And so, how do we keep them? How do we keep them engaged? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. So that sort of sets up the problem. Now, what makes turnover happen, especially for your highest performers, for your most important people? Well, communication is a big one. And, today we have this kind of a format, talking head format. You can put up a Zoom meeting with a couple hundred people and blast it out there. But this is what it looks like. It's a non-dynamic situation. It's everyone knows, like, you're kind of talking out into the black hole. And is there a way to get people to move, engage, and that can we get communication not just from a talking head to the troops, but can we get the troops talking to each other, right? Can we get silos breaking down? This leads to support and resources. Tools are an important part of effective communication and effective support. And sometimes companies just don't have what they need in order to actually help people to communicate the way that they need to, and that affects career development. Now, your company may have a career program that is very intentional, very successful, but most companies don't have. Only really the biggest companies have really, really significant career development programs. And so how does it happen in a normal business is, you kind of hallway conversations, mentorships, kind of informal water cooler conversations is how it happens. And so career development is also suppressed when communication is suppressed. And, of course, compensation is a big part of retention as well. And this is not a compensation seminar, so we're not going to sort of get into the details of, how you use compensation to replace people. But it has been proven that when you are sort of thinking about retaining people, you have to help them balance their life with their work. And I always put it this way: if you go above and beyond for the company will go above and beyond for you, which means that, if you're a really great, valuable resource, you really help the company, and then you have a personal problem, I'm going to be able to give you a lot of, room and a lot of space in order to resolve that issue. And so it's important, though, to make sure that we do that, especially for our top performers, right? Because we expect so much of them, and they take on so much themselves, that often we forget that our top performers are the ones that we almost have to force to take vacation time. Okay, so work-life balance is not something we have to worry about for our low performers. It's something we really need to worry about for our high performers, because they're the ones, when they burn out and they quit, then the company just loses, and you have to pay the money and you have to replace someone, and they're probably not going to be as good as the person who left. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take a few minutes and we're going to do a peer learning exercise. Now, since you're in Scoot, you're already organized into groups in the room, okay? And there's a Scoot representative with you, and you probably would just sort of, to get oriented around this, you are in a two-dimensional space, and as Claire mentioned when you entered the room, you can turn the map on and off using the upper left-hand corner. There's a little mini map, and you can kind of open and close that map just to kind of see where you are. In the lower left-hand corner of your screen, not when I'm in presentation mode, but when I get out of presentation mode, in the lower left-hand corner of your screen, there'll be a plus and minus sign that you can use to zoom in and out. And then also there's music at the bottom, and you can control the volume of the music yourself. If you feel like moving around, you can use your arrow keys to move around, and you hold down your arrow key to do that, right? So the reason why we're doing this peer learning, as I mentioned earlier, is because you can learn from each other. And if you can't unmute or turn off your camera, that's okay. But if you can, this would be a great time to help your sort of peers to join the conversation and let's just say, what is our biggest challenge with remote employee communication? And how do you know that you're having a problem with it? How does it manifest? That's an important question too. It's not just what's your biggest challenge, like how do you know you have a problem? How can you see it coming? So I'm going to jump out of presentation mode here and we'll have just a brief conversation with us in our little groups, and then I'll come back and I'll start to give you some tips on how to really fix this. Let's go ahead and go to what you discussed. So at the bottom of your screen, there is a little button, and if you press it, and if you're kind of unmuted, you can speak to the room, or if you want to, you can put any comments in the chat. Okay, so just kind of what did your groups talk about?
Yeah. So in my group, we talked a little bit about kind of communication or potentially sometimes lack of communication over tools like Slack, where sometimes remote employees can just go offline for a period and there's a lack of responsiveness, which can kind of lead to questions around, are they actually doing work, or what's going on there?
That's interesting. Well, I had a great chat with Donna, who's been to more than one Scoot sort of webinar, which is awesome to see. I think she said she was from UNC or from Chapel Hill. And she was mentioning that she didn't really have as much of a challenge with communication, but that's because she takes the commuting time that she would have been spending driving to and from work. She takes that time and specifically uses it to communicate with her team, which I thought was pretty interesting. And so one of the benefits, I know the average commute time in America is 26 or 28 minutes each way. And so if you kind of think about that and say, well, gosh, what if I took 50 minutes a day and I did nothing but communicate with my team? That'd be pretty crazy. So that was a really, really great sort of tip. And then also she said that they sometimes still get together to meet in person. So, they still get together for lunches or drinks or some other things, and that's still really, really nice. Anybody else have anything to contribute?
Yes, so I think it's sort of the same. Just one of the two main issues is, like you said, like the previous person said, things getting lost in translation, and I think also the missing of the interactiveness when you're remote, and also the complaints of sometimes when we do activities, like the engagement. So that idea of like, we're in Canada, so we have different offices in different states, so it's hard to do a collective activity. So we try and do an activity that everyone can participate in their state, but it's still not exactly the same feeling.
Yeah. Well, it's a old saying that people don't leave a company, they leave a manager. And I think that could even be modified to say that they, if they don't have strong relationships in their company, that's when they start to think about maybe this is the place for me, because we need high quality relationships in our lives for support, for feedback, for mentorship, for all those things. And it's just really not rewarding sometimes if you don't have that. And so helping people to foster those relationships amongst themselves is tricky, because they're adults, right? This is not high school dance. This is like a, kind of putting adults together in situations where they're supposed to become friends is a little trickier, I think. So let's keep going. Okay, let's talk about a couple strategies, and it's just great to hear each of you kind of helping each other. One of the things that we see with one of our clients, and we mentioned this one in several of our conversations, is interactive onboarding. So, when you're bringing people onboarding, that's when they're the most ready to receive new relationships, right? They're in friend making mode, and so typically in a lot of onboarding scenarios, you kind of have the person in charge of it and then the class, and they go through the material, and that's that. But imagine if you could bring people into a place like a Scoot room and then actually kind of bring in a senior manager to say hello, bring in the CEO to say hello. and you just kind of have this natural flow, the same way that you might have if the CEO stopped by and just kind of stuck their head in the door and said, hello, hi, everybody. So glad you joined the company. Now, regular check-ins, everybody knows we should do these. And so the reason I put this one in here isn't because you don't know it, but because we all need to be reminded to do them, right? It is, especially with staff that have been in the labor market, I'd say, been working for maybe like 3 years or less. These are the ones who are going to have the hardest time to sort of like ask for their boss's time, to ask for a check-in, right? They're not usually ready to do that. And so when you have a regular check-in scheduled, what that means is your kind of colleague or your employee can prepare themselves for a serious or important conversation, right? Because like if some people are totally normal, just saying, oh yeah, hey, I want to talk to you about my raise. For other people, it's just terrifying to ask for a raise. And if they know they have a one-on-one scheduled on Thursday, they will spend all week getting ready for that. And if you cancel that one-on-one, like, 5 minutes before, like, hey, let's reschedule. It's like this person who just spent the whole week getting themselves ready to have this conversation with you, you just basically pulled the rug out from under them. And so it's really, really important to have these regular check-ins and be consistent with them. And I find that, with the more senior executives, that's not as necessary because they're a little bit more go with the flow. But especially for your more junior staff, that's really, really important. Now, here's a Scoot specific one. If you have a physical office, chances are the lobby has some posters, some artifacts of your organization's culture, maybe core values hanging on the wall, maybe some picture books or other awards that the company has won. And maybe your conference rooms are also decorated. And when you bring people together, you sometimes give them a t-shirt or other things in order to kind of reinforce your company's employer brand, your culture. And in a virtual meeting, that's really, really hard to do. But in Scoot, it's really, really easy because, in this example that's on your screen, you can see that there's a core values section, there's a benefits section, and this allows you to reinforce those key messages. And that's just another tool in your toolbox. So custom virtual Scoot spaces are really, really helpful for that. Icebreakers are great. And these are not icebreakers like at a social event. I'm talking about icebreakers at a business meeting, right? So you get people together for a QBR or a town hall or an all hands meeting, and you basically will say, let's go ahead and spend 5 minutes mixed in to do some peer learning, some peer sharing, an icebreaker, and that breaks things up and it makes it more interesting. Now, nearing the end of these strategies today, mentorship is a big one because when people are remote, it's really, really hard for them to kind of drive their career. And it's really, really hard for them to understand how will I get promoted. And so the main way to do this is with, aligning a mentorship program. And I feel like that is, something that can be either highly structured or it can be unstructured. And sometimes structured mentorship programs feel a little bit awkward. And so one thing you can consider is an unstructured mentorship program, which is where you kind of have a period of time once a month, kind of like ask me anything or bring in senior executives. And sometimes we'll do that with 2 or 3 or 4 of us. And then the team members can kind of float and go where they want to, almost like an informal gathering. But the important part there is to have the senior leaders or the leaders there so that people can kind of meet some potential mentors, see if they like them, see if they jive with them, and then that kind of can flow into a mentorship relationship. Whereas, if you have a very structured mentorship program, people might be hesitant to kind of get stuck, right, with a match that isn't good for them. So having a more informal kind of entry process into that mentorship program can be really, really powerful and really, really interesting. That provides access to leadership, something that Johnson & Johnson, one of our largest clients, does. And by the way, this doesn't have to be small. Today's gathering here is, there's about 20, 25 of us, but we do this for 1,500, 2,500 people as well. And so, if you run a large organization, you can do mentorship fairs and, gatherings at scale. You don't have to do it in small numbers, but it works small and it works large. All right, so let's do one more peer learning. Now this one, we're going to do something that's even a little bit more, I say it's exciting. So what we're going to do is we're just going to talk about a retention strategy that's worked for you. And each person in each group is going to have a Scoot person in it. And that Scoot person will share their screen. We're going to have different screen sharings happening in different parts of the room. And then we're going to kind of scribe and take our notes, and then we'll come up and I'll share them all. So we'll just kind of see what we come up with. And it'll just be not just a good way to share some information, but also a demonstration of how you can kind of get groups to do something with the information that you're trying to convey, right? And that is engaging. It's more engaging than just sitting and listening, okay? So we're going to do that right now, and I will come back in a couple minutes. We created this set of groups in the room, and we had everybody sharing screens separately from each other, doing their own thing, and then we can kind of come together and share that information kind of in this presentation mode. And so that's just a more interactive format than just kind of talking head. Now, I won't go into these in great detail because we're going to send these out to you. All right, but you can see Gab is leading a group there, creating a culture committee, employee recognition during all hands meetings, some great tips there, quarterly in-person gatherings with like pickleball tournaments is fun. As we mentioned, Donna, she had said that she has these everyday check-ins with her team. She has a team of 7 people. She uses that commuting time to spend with her team members. I'll get to mine last. Elizabeth, stipends, breakaways. We had some treats being delivered, we saw, and team meetings throughout the week. Highest performing persons required to take a long weekend. That's an interesting one, right? Because again, those high performers are the ones who will just kind of burn themselves out, And so if you kind of say, hey, go take a day off, chances are they're probably going to make up for it anyway. But it's just kind of a great show for them. So that's pretty interesting. I'm going to go back to my presentation, and that was a kind of a great little way to show how that works. And that's what we discussed. I just kind of went through that, and I'm just going to kind of wrap up my presentation here. Okay. We do have a couple words from the sponsor that'll be coming up here in just a second. A couple things about Scoot that I wanted to share, but just to kind of wrap up, communication is key. Oh wait, no, I forgot mine. So what I do for kind of like really engaging my employees and my remote employees for retention, the number one thing I've done throughout my whole career is that like every 6 to 12 months, I actually will take my team members and have a conversation with them about what they want their career to be. Where do they want their career to go? What job do they want? And the important part about making that work for retention is that you have to be willing to talk about scenarios where that career goal might not be able to be accomplished at the company. And that's what makes it really powerful. And I learned this from a friend of mine in a networking organization that I participate in, who is in a service industry, IT services industry, where turnover is super high. And he used this technique to have way above industry average retention. And he did that counterintuitively by asking people whether or not they thought the company could give them what they need. And more often than not, when that conversation was really authentic, the company could do it. But once in a while, when it couldn't, he would give them career advice and say, I think you should go do this. And then he would actually help them or become a reference for them. But that always fed back to the rest of the team, and it created a really positive culture about really helping people drive their careers forward. So that was mine. But getting back to this wrap up, we talked about communication, work-life balance, and interactive onboarding, or having virtual spaces where your team can gather, and a couple stories about some of the Scoot clients, and we did some peer learning. But I don't want you to miss out on, some of the things that you could be doing with Scoot. Okay, I know the economy's tough, and I know getting budget is hard, but employee retention of your top performers is very valuable monetarily, as we pointed out. And so, when you have a platform where you can have free movement and you can have these separate group conversations, you can brand it and customize it the way you want. It really can create a more engaging and closer knit company than what you would experience using one of those older legacy platforms. And you may not know this, but Scoot has a 90-day money-back guarantee. Often that can be very helpful in convincing or persuading your budget holders that you want to give this a try, and just tell them, look, if this doesn't make a difference, we'll just get our money back. And we also have some very reasonable ways to get started. Lots of companies using the platform successfully and lots of great ratings. Now, let me just stop here and see if there's any questions from the audience. And we'll just do some quick Q&A. And then when I'm done here, we'll actually have it so that you can go and enter to win a $100 gift card. So that's the prize for joining us today, is that, we're doing a $100 gift card giveaway today, and we'll tell you how you can go ahead and move around the Scoot room to apply for that. And so just let me see if there's any questions from the audience. You can either press the button at the bottom of your screen, or you can actually just go ahead and put it in the chat. So let's see. Do we have any questions out there?
Yeah, I'm wondering a little bit about how do you measure remote employee engagement? What are some ways that you do that?
Well, retention is a pretty good way to do it, especially regrettable departures or so when people who are really, really valuable are leaving the company, that is one way to measure it. Another way is just in your team meetings to see how many people are interacting, how many people are participating in your team meetings. How active are they? Do you feel like you're talking into a void, or do you feel like, people are having a live conversation? And usually that's a bit of a feeling, but that's one of the ways that we do it. And actually, cameras on in a meeting is one of the ways that we see that happen. And so the cameras on, typically what we see is that when people join a meeting, they may not have even expected to be more engaged than they normally were. So some of you may just be in places today where you just can't have your camera on. But what you would see is that after 3 times of using Scoot, typically your company will be at 80 to 90% cameras on for your meetings. Okay, and that's a big difference from what we typically will see. So you kind of see those camera on percentages go up as people become more familiar with it. Let's see, Claire is sharing a question that she had heard, which is, how we address the challenges of remote work isolation. Well, I think you saw it today, allowing people to move in a virtual setting gives them the ability to choose their conversation, to choose the people that they interact with. And so, isolation can only be solved when somebody wants to end it. And that means that they have to be able to choose what they want to do, and they have to be able to go and do it. So, mainly by giving our attendees agency to kind of form the relationships that they want, that's what really creates the power. Cool. I don't know. Do we have any more? Doesn't seem like it. I must have done a great job presenting today, all the information. So let's go ahead and, again, we have a 90-day money-back guarantee. So if you have remote employee engagement, you want to level it up, think about using a platform and think about giving Scoot a try, because with a 90-day money-back guarantee and a lot of proven success stories, it actually works. and it works very, very well. You can meet me in the middle of the room. You just hold down your arrow keys to meet me there. And also, you have a chance to win. If that map in the upper left-hand corner of your screen, you would be able to open up the map, and at various places in the room, you'll see that we have 6 gold pots. And if you go to one of those gold pots, there's a little button that you click on. And if you fill out the form, then you will have an opportunity to win $100 gift card. And one of the advantages of attending a webinar with, let's just say, 20 people attending, one of the advantages of that is that your chances to win are pretty high. So I encourage you to move around and go ahead and give that a try. And with that, I will go ahead and just be in the middle of the room if one of you wants to meet up. I know also Elizabeth is in the room. She's talked to a lot of you. So thank you so much for coming today. And we will see you in the room, and go find yourself a pot of gold.